And anything that throws you off is a good thing. It's a challenge, right? It makes you stronger. Like it's people are too soft nowadays, right? You know what I mean? It's good that
Yeah.
if you get a flat tire, it's good because it teaches you resilience. You know what I mean? Like, yes.
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. So today you're about to listen to another very special guest, Pat Hiban. He's a renowned figure in the real estate industry and coach and mentor to aspiring entrepreneurs. Pat's track record of success speaks for itself. He's an accomplished author, speaker, real estate investor, multimillionaire, and former podcast host of the Estate Rockstars, which is still going today with over 1,100 episodes. He's best known for his book, 6 Steps to 7 Figures, and the recently released The Quitter's Manifesto. Pat is also one of the founding members of the high-level mastermind group, Gobundance. And in my interview with Pat, we start off with his history, move into his book, but then our conversation quickly goes to places that I didn't think about involving real estate and life in general, like what are Pat's views on owning single-family rentals for cash flow and what brings him joy today. The rabbit hole continues with the founding of Gobundance, but if you listen really carefully, there is so much wisdom packed in between the stories. And wait for at the end when he tells yours truly what he thinks about the podcast. So there is so much more that we could have talked about today and didn't, that Pat agreed to come back on the show. Now, I have to ask you to do me a favor. At the end of the podcast, please leave a 5-star review, hit subscribe, share with a friend, and drop me a note on my website and let me know what you think. My mission is to see you take small steps that lead to big wins. So, here's my friend, Pat Hiban. Hey, Pat, welcome. Thanks for taking your time out to be here. I am so excited.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me on, Sue.
Perfect. Pat, I want to read your bio that I found on the GoBundance website because I wanted to encourage others as we spend our time together. So here's what it says. It says, labeled as learning disabled at 8, his journey to success as a semi-retired New York Times International best-selling author of 6 Steps to 7 Figures, radio show host, entrepreneur, and billion-dollar real estate agent was driven by his desire to make a difference in the lives of others. And you said on there, quote, I started at the bottom, learning every aspect of real estate, and in 2011 earned the #1 agent in the world ranking from 2 major real estate companies, end quote. He says all that not to brag, but to tell you that anything is possible when your drive is strong enough and your hunger for learning is present. Okay, so, wow, I love it. We're going to dive into all this. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. But before we do this, I have a question. I watch you on videos from time to time. I have to ask you, what is tattooed under your inside right arm? Because it says something, and
So
I don't know what it says.
this says love is spelled time, Time. And this is a crayon font. The time is in crayon, and this is my kids' birthstone colors used for each letter. So you can pretty much
Beautiful.
guess what that means. So
Wow. I love it. I love art, no matter what kind of art it is, that has meaning attached to it. So I
mm,
think that's beautiful. All right. So weaved into your story is a beginning, and many successful entrepreneurs have a defining moment that sets them on their path. Looking back, thinking about it, could you share a pivotal moment or an experience that led you on the trajectory of the accomplishments that you've achieved?
yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't know what I didn't know. You know, growing up, I'm an extrovert in a family of introverts. I have 4 siblings, and they're all introverts. So I was kind of the outsider. And so I didn't know, the difference between working for myself or working for somebody else or being a businessman or making commissions or any of that stuff. And I, from early on, I just took jobs paying hourly wages, washing dishes and things like that. And when I was 20 or 19 or so, I took a job in a resort town, Ocean City, Maryland, as a actually I took a job at working in a deli. So I was making, hourly wage in a deli. And a friend of mine from college had this job where he was working on the boardwalk, which is where people, walk around and go play video games and eat bad food and stuff like that. And he told me what he would do is walk up to people and try to convince them to go take this timeshare tour. And everybody that he got to take the tour, he'd get $20 commission. And I said, well, I'll give it a shot. And so I gave it a shot. And the second day I came in and they put everybody's results on like this board as to how many they sold, how many people actually physically went and took the timeshare tour from the day before. And my number was 101. So they wouldn't put your name, they just put your number. And the leading salesperson was, let's say, 43. It was this kid, they called him the Golden Boy. He would always be in the number one spot. He'd get like 3 people a day, and that would make him like $60, which was big bucks then. And I remember coming in the next day, and in the back of the room of a big crowd of young salespeople, them looking at the board, and he was in front of me, and he looked to his friend and he goes, "Who the hell is 101?" And I looked up and I had 5 people, and which was like $100, and you also got like a $50 bonus if you got like the most, right? Whoever that day. So I made like $150 in a day, and my cutting meats at the deli would make me like 130 in a week. Mm-hmm. And so I remember thinking to myself, like, holy dirt, like there must be something here, because I made more money than I did in a week in like a day or a half a day just working for commissions. And that was my first real brush with a commission job, or let's just say a job where I was paid for my abilities versus for the abilities that anybody in the world could do. And I didn't know, like I had no idea. Like all I had done is like wash dishes, bus tables, cut meat, stuff like that. I had no inkling of sales and people-oriented businesses or things like that. I had no inkling of compensation for efforts like that would happen to be like 5 or 7 or 10 times as much. Like, to me, it didn't make any sense. It's like I didn't deserve that money. It was like, oh my God, how did I even make that money? But I'll never forget that to the day I die. That guy was just like, who the hell is 101? And I thought, wow, maybe I didn't. No one ever told me, right? No one ever told me. I just thought that I just did what the boss said to do. The boss just said, go out on the boardwalk and hand out these cards and look the people in the eye and say these words. And I was like, well, okay, I can do that.
So now I'm even more curious. How did the rest of the summer go for you then? So that was day one. I can't imagine what the rest of the summer was like.
I didn't even go back to the deli. Like literally, I didn't even give 2 weeks. I didn't even speak to the guy. I went when it was time to go back to college. Like on my way back to college, I stopped off at the deli because I still had a paycheck there to pick up. And he goes, I was wondering when you were going to come get this. And I think deep down I was afraid. I was embarrassed because I just stopped showing up for work and I didn't call or nothing. And it was like 6 weeks later, or 2 months later, and I picked up the paycheck. He was like, I was wondering when you come get this. And anyways, I didn't go back. I just was making so much money. And I was like, well, this is great. And I only had to work like 5 or 6 hours a day. And it was the best job ever.
So fast forward a little bit. Did you make the connection between that commission job and real estate at some point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I think like I graduated college and my degree was in sociology. And that was just because, the money was running out. Like there was no fifth year for me. It wasn't going to happen. Like I was either going to go in 4 years or not graduate. So I picked the major with the least amount of credits, which was sociology, just to get out. And otherwise I would have had to add time because I couldn't have, because I didn't know. I couldn't decide. I was very undecisive. And so I got out. There was no jobs, or at least I didn't interview well or whatever. I was substitute teaching, and I got my real estate license while I was substitute teaching because somebody offhandedly said, anybody can sell real estate. There's kind of no barrier to entry. You know what I mean? Like you don't
You don't
need a
have to go to,
college degree. You don't need
right,
anything. So I said, well, let me get that, and I'll substitute teach, and I'll still apply to like the probation and parole office and all that. And they were like, well, we got a year waiting list, and it only pays this low salary and all this stuff. And then I was like, well, we'll see what happens. And then next thing you know, I sold a house, and
then you get the commission check and go,
you get the
wow,
commission, you're like,
look at how,
again.
I didn't work a whole lot. That's what I got. If I had to substitute teach, it would have taken you a lot longer, So, when you put that two and two together between getting either an hourly paycheck or getting rewarded and getting compensation for accomplishing a goal like that, and you start thinking, oh, wait a minute, maybe I don't want to do this hour thing anymore. What was one of the biggest surprises that you didn't think was going to happen when you started your journey?
That's a great question. I mean, see, when I first got into business, I was doing it wrong. I was like a junkyard dog, I just I would just take whatever I could get, like whoever said, hey, I want to look for houses, or I want to buy a house, or whatever. And I didn't focus on listing any houses. I might have had one listing a year for my first 2 years, and all the rest were buyers. And then I took a course on my third year that was like, hey, forget about buyers, only focus on listing houses, because you're in so much more control. You could have 50 listings and all the other agents will sell them for you, and you don't have to do the work. But you can never have 50 buyers. You can only have maybe like 5, because they'll drive you crazy. And this was back when you had to put them in the back of your car and drive them around. There was no like public MLS. You were like, hey, welcome to the office, we're going to go see 5 houses a day, and the buyer wouldn't know about what the house was until you actually got there. You didn't even print the stuff out. You just told them that you were going to see 5 houses. Anyways, he flipped me around, and I think that my first year I made $13,000. My second year I made 24, and then my third year, when I started focusing on just listing houses, I made like $105,000. And
oh, wow. That was a lot. Around what time frame? Are we talking like 90s, late 80s, 90s?
Exactly. I graduated, my first year was 88, 89, 1990. So that would be the 1990.
Okay.
And
you're not much older than me. I graduated in 89. So yeah, way back when. I remember looking for a house in the backseat of a realtor's car.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how you did it.
That's how you did it. There was no internet.
No, I remember one buyer I had, and he was like, I'm going to meet you after work every Tuesday and Thursday until we find a house. He said, we're going to meet you after work. We're going to look at 4 houses every Tuesday and every Thursday until we find a house. And it took me like 3 months to find that guy a house, and I was with them 2 days. I mean, that was just how you did it. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah. So anyway, so that would be my answer to your question, was like, I really understood. And I think what I learned, actually, more than the fact that I needed to be a listing agent, was the fact that I needed to listen to experts and listen, and there's somebody other than my broker or the other agents in the office that could teach me the shortcuts, because almost 100% of the agents, less like me and maybe one other in the area, was doing it the way this guy that was teaching this class told us how to do it. And so they all sucked. You know what I mean? Like they all didn't get it. But this outside instructor who came to town understood it and got it. And he taught it to me. And I'm like, this is a no-brainer. This works so much better. And so I learned that there's so much more to learn from outside influence than just the influence that's happens to surround you in your office or in your zip code.
That's a good point that you make, that, there's other people out there who, if they're doing something that you're interested in doing, or you see them doing something differently, to go after and learn from them. Do you still bring that into your life today too? Seek out people. Yeah. So it's really timeless advice, huh?
Yeah. It's timeless. And it's so much easier now. I mean, I just got off a Zoom call where, there was the owner of Spartan Race, the founder of Spartan Race, Joe DeCina, was on, and he was answering questions for Gobundance members. And I was like, I wrote down like 3 or 4 things, but it's so much easier now, with podcasts and
oh yeah,
Zoom and all that. Good Lord. I'm very grateful for the real estate industry, because the real estate industry taught me, like, you're allowed to have this broad base of knowledge where you could learn stuff. If I had gone into car sales or computer sales or something, they might have brought somebody in to teach you how to sell more computers or closing deals, but it wouldn't have been this huge, broad realm of, Tony Robbins and, Les Brown and all these, people that you could just, real estate was very open-minded.
As you advanced in your career and you gathered more real estate, became more successful, what did you do that helped you to stand out and differentiate yourself from others that you think contributed to your success?
I got really lucky in that I tend to, and I this is just born this way. It's not learned at all. I used to do television commercials, and people would be like, you just seem so authentic, and you just seem like so approachable, and you just seem like a nice guy. So we called you. And they'd say things like, I don't understand it, but my kids don't pay attention to any commercials until you come on, and then they pay attention and they like memorize whatever you're saying. And I was like, I don't understand that either, right? I think it's because I don't try real hard, but
How did that make you feel? How did that make you feel? Like, to hear that kind of thing, and actually those things that were the most natural that come the most natural to us, we don't feel like it's work, right? So when you were in that and they're telling you about these commercials, how'd you feel about that?
I didn't know. It was kind of like doing the things on the boardwalk, selling on the boardwalk. I didn't know. I didn't know, I didn't know that I didn't know until someone told me. I even remember, I even remember one time I bought this like pinstriped suit, like a expensive suit. They're like, yeah, you got to get this. It's like a dark blue pinstripe suit. And I wore it to a settlement, and the lady was like, I want to let you know that suit does not fit you. And I go, what? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I called you because of your TV commercial, and you came across as like this authentic guy, and that suit makes you look pretentious. And again, it was just I don't know if it was right or wrong or whatever, right? I mean, but it did make me think, like, shit, what does that mean? Like what? Anyway.
So did you start figuring out like a definition for authenticity then? As people kept telling you, well, that's not authentic, that seems more like authentic. What did you wind up dialing in on, if you did? Like what was authentic Pat? What would you have shown up in instead of a suit to closing?
I don't know. I didn't. It was kind of weird because this was back in, back then it was, ties and suits were commonplace. Now nobody wears them. No real estate agents wear them. Only lawyers and stockbrokers.
Now people barely show up for closing.
Right.
You can sign them. You can sign them and not even be there. So,
I didn't. Yeah. I think it just encouraged me to be more of myself, and actually encouraged me to be more creative and more self-deprecating and
Mm.
funny and more humorous, because it took away that insecurity. So I was like, all right, well, what if I did
How did
this?
how did you bring humor into real estate then?
I just turned myself into a cartoon and shot myself out of a cannon, and just like crack jokes and just came up with funny sayings and all
Good.
the simple stuff, like but
So there are challenges in real estate, right? So probably I would assume throughout your career, you likely faced setbacks and obstacles. What did you like? What was your mindset towards those when you encountered them?
towards my mindset towards
Yeah,
obstacles.
yeah, or setbacks. Because I know a lot of people, either entrepreneurs or no matter what you're in, right? You're going to have challenges. So I was just wondering what your perspective was on challenges.
I don't know. I mean, you just deal with them, right? I don't think I necessarily dealt with them well, and I still don't deal with them well. Like
Mm.
challenges cause stress, and
Mhm.
stress is not good for you. I think over time you learn to not get caught up in drama. In the beginning you want to get caught up in drama, especially if there's money involved, right? Like literally, like if you have that $8,000 commission, and you're going to lose that $8,000 commission if you don't figure out how to get rid of the termites in this house or get a house to appraise or something like that. Then you just go into flow state and start trying to do
Mm.
everything you can. But as I get older, it's like I'm more of the mentality of I'm going to do what I can, but it is what it is. I don't know. I have another tattoo that says right here on my arm. It says the gravity of the battle means nothing to those at peace, and
Mm.
it kind of means like don't sweat the small stuff. Like don't get pulled down. The gravity don't get pulled down by these battles in life, because they really don't mean anything. You know and that's a way for me to alleviate stress. If I so much of what we stress about is all BS and not going to come to reality. So I look at my arm and I think that. But again, it's easier for me to say now too, because I have money and I have time. Where
Mhm.
before, in my mind, it was the end of the world if I lost the deal.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things. It's like easy for him to say.
Well, when we're in it, we know hindsight's always 2020, right? When you look
Mm.
back. I guess when you're on the other side, it's just a spot where it's like, oh, well, I just dealt with it. And some people do that too. I mean, it's fine. I usually ask a number of guests, how did they mitigate one thing or another? But you know what? Actually, you bring a really good point. Like, don't sweat those things. You just do it because you have to. It's a matter of perspective, right? How
Mm.
you view that situation that's in front of you. You can either stress out or you can accept it and then go find a solution. It sounds like you're the type of guy who just rolled with it. You accepted it. You found a solution because you have to. And there's no other option.
Right.
So
You want to
that's
get
not
paid, you got to
yeah, you
figure
want
it
to get
out.
paid. Yeah, you got to eat. So income was the driver.
Right.
Do you mind if we talk about a couple of your books that you wrote? I had some questions on those.
Sure.
So you wrote a number of best-selling books. So one of them is called 6 Steps to 7 Figures, and you offer valuable insights to achieving financial success. The 6 steps that were listed in the book are to set big goals, build the right team, create multiple income streams, master sales and marketing, invest wisely, and give back and leave a legacy. What would you say would be the most underrated step?
Well, step 5, which is build upon success up rather than the ground up. Kind of, if you do one thing right, then maybe there's something there, and you should build on that. Kind of like when I knew that I was never going to have a salary job again. Just build on that. That's kind of when I knew, when someone said, my commercials work. And since the first commercial, we probably did 10 more. Yeah, like if something is working, then build on that and build on it and build on it and build on it. Don't go off and try. Like if television commercials work for me, it would be bad for me to go and try postcards or something else, right? Just
Right.
go with what works.
With the one thing, make the one
Yeah,
thing the main thing and build
build,
on it.
build, build,
Yeah.
build. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in this day and age, there's like so many shiny objects. Everybody runs in 20 different
Tons.
directions and think that, oh, I see this on Facebook. This person made millions doing this. I'm going to go try
And
to do
they
that.
think there's so much ingenuity. There's so many episodes of Shark Tank on repeat, and
Mm,
entrepreneurship is a buzzword. The fact of the matter is, like, not everybody's, 99.9% of people just are, it's not wrong, but they're not entrepreneurs, right?
mm-hmm.
You shouldn't force somebody into it unless they find out for themselves. Um, because most people are not, and that's good. That's how it should be. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I said, I'm from a family of 4 introverts, so they'd be miserable doing what I do.
Yeah.
They would have jumped off a cliff
Yeah.
years ago.
Talking about timelines, how long did it take you from when you started real estate to that point where you realized, okay, I'm now financially free. I don't have to sell another house. Talk about that time. So, talk a little bit about your journey.
It's very hard. I think that ideally I would want the true story to be, or the false story to be, I bought a bunch of real estate, and that rent paid me horizontal income to the point where I was able to quit selling real estate. The problem with that is eventually you run out of money. A couple of things happen. Like, I'm going to keep it simple, but let's just say I'm buying single family houses and getting loans on them personally and renting them out. Eventually you run out of down payment. Eventually the mortgage companies won't loan you any more money because you don't have enough cash flow to get qualified. And all any profits that you do make are being depreciated on your tax returns, and you got cross collateralization, that's, you basically show you're making zero money, so you can't get a loan. It's almost like in reality you still need some form of cash flow in order to keep investing, because after a couple of years it's hard to keep doing it. And I kind of
Mm-hmm.
learned that the hard way. I mean, I pretty much got out in 2010 and then started selling, wrote my first book. Then I went on book tour to do that. Like, by 2014, I'm like, okay, now what? Like, I bought a bunch of houses, started getting into apartment buildings, but then, I didn't have a cash flow. You almost need like a job to keep it going. So I don't want to just tell you this myth.
No, I think the hard story has to come out because I think that's part of the problem. When we listen to other people's stories, it's like, yeah, I bought 20, I bought 20 single family homes and now I'm financially free. And it doesn't always work out that way. So no, I appreciate your story because we should hear that
Yeah.
it's not that cookie cutter sometimes. And it's
No,
not
I
always
was
that
at
straightforward.
Yeah, I was at Bigger Pockets conference last year, and a girl told me, she's like, I've been using the Burr method, which is a legitimate method, and it's very popular. It makes a lot of sense. And I have, 14 houses, and I thought that I would be able to retire from my job, but I'm worth a lot on paper. Like, I have all this equity because these houses went up in value, but I don't, at the end of the day, I'm kicking butt on 4 of them, but then one of them needs a new roof and a new air conditioner,
Mm-hmm.
so it eats up all the profit from the other
Yep.
4, and so I don't have any cash flow, so I can't quit my job. And I said, well, yeah, I think that's a reality with a lot of people. I mean, I'm very blessed. I'm actually very count my lucky stars for Gobundance, because like that was my kind of allowed me to make some money after probably 5 years of spending money on investments.
Yeah. So
I
it
don't
doesn't
know. I don't
always
know
work
how we
out that
got
way.
here, but yeah.
That doesn't matter. It's still a good conversation because I think, like I said, I think all of us get enamored that we have to own real estate. We need to own cash flowing properties. We have to have those things that are flowing. But I think it's really important that we hear the dark side of real estate as well, because the reality is that, wait a minute, if I'm buying at like this first property and it's only cash flowing at $400 a month, and a lot of stuff is only pulling that in. I mean, I have a lot of investor friends, they're breaking even in what their rentals are pulling in. And yeah, on the one hand, it's good because you get somebody paying off the mortgage and it's building the equity in the house. But on the other hand, it doesn't get you any closer to financial freedom, which was the purpose of buying single family homes to some people in the first place. So I think it's a necessary conversation that we need to hear more of out there. It's the reality, the dark side of owning real estate. We always get that Facebook high, oh, I bought it, my next property. And, for some it works, for others not so much. So you mentioned about Gobundance. So in 2012, and correct me if I'm wrong on the dates, you met Dave Osborne. Well, you might have known him before then, but you and David Osborne and Tim formed Gobundance. And you guys, if I remember correctly, had an accountability relationship prior. So I was on the website and I saw a napkin on the website that had the Gobundance logo. And I was wondering if you would just kind of go back to 2012 when Gobundance was born. Like, what was the catalyst that made you guys decide to form something bigger than just the three of you guys having an accountability mastermind? And what did the early days look like?
Well, it's kind of like the other two stories that I told you, where you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know until somebody tells you. But what happened was Tim and David and I met David in 1997 and Tim in like 2 or something. And
okay.
And so I had known him for years, and so we had been traveling together and keeping each other accountable and setting goals together and being very like self-aware of improvement and stuff like that. And we started inviting other people to hang out with us. And next thing you know, one day we're at David's house and we get like 16 people sleeping all over his floors and cots and stuff and couches. And then we said, hey, this is crazy. 16 people are in this house. We said, hey, let's rent a bunch of hotel rooms and do it in like an area. And again, we weren't really charging anybody for anything. We were like, come ski with us. And we think we had 38 people coming, and we're like, and then afterwards we're like, holy dirt, that was a lot of work. We're tired. 38 people just came and like wanted to hang out with us, which is good for your ego, but at the same time, if we're going to do the work, let's charge money and get paid for it.
Yeah. Was everybody kind of in the same cohort group? Like, were you all millionaires at that time?
I think most of us, yeah, most of us were at that time, most of us were in the real estate sales brokerage business. I think we had a couple mortgage officers and title people, but they were all like people we could reach out and touch for the most part. Wasn't very diversified as far as an occupation was concerned. But once we started charging money for it, then it became open game for all occupations and all, people. And then we actually reached a point where we said no more real estate people because there's too many. I think we reached like half. We're not going above half. And now it's just crazy. It's like, we got like 20 doctors and we got like 20 lawyers and we got 20, accountants. So it's like,
So it's like 11 years later. What are some things that surprised you about where Gobundance is today?
The whole thing. Like, people don't like that answer either because they want to have this image of your future and you're confident in your future and everything's going to work. But I didn't think anybody. I was like, well, we were going to like charge $1,000 or $1,500, and I'm like, oh, no one's going to pay that. Like, you know what I mean? And now now Champions is $20,000 a year, and so I'm not surprised anymore. I'm not surprised today. I won't be surprised if Matt King is able to take this from 1,000 people to 10,000 people. But was I surprised from 200 to 1,000? Yeah. Was I surprised from 10 to 200? Yeah. Not necessarily proud of that, but the fact is,
Did you say you're not proud of that? Because you built
well,
an
yeah,
organization that serves people, right? So I'm
I guess so.
curious.
No, well, I am proud of that. I am proud of it. I'm not proud of the fact that I didn't have the belief. I
Oh,
think part of
okay.
me is critical and part of me is conservative. I have parts of me that are critical and conservative, which means I think a lot of things won't work,
Mm.
and I think what's wrong with this, and especially if no one's done it before. And 11 years ago, there really wasn't any no one was doing masterminds. Like, no, you know what
Hmm.
I mean? No one would, there was no such thing as masterminds. There wasn't one that we didn't have any competition, right?
Hmm.
Now I can name, 7 or 8. So that's kind of what I meant, that I'm not proud of my inability to believe at the time, but I'm very proud of what we've done with it. And I'm the type of person, I just, I go with the flow. Like, if it's flowing in that direction, again, it's just like the other stories I told. If it's flowing in that direction, it's working.
Hmm. You're
I'm
there.
I'm not resisting it. I'm not saying stop at 50 members. I'm like, let's do it. Let's go. Come on.
You know what? I'm glad you shared the story though, because a lot of us, I think deep down, we struggle with unbelief no matter what it is. Like, we just
Yeah.
don't think we can do that thing, or we lack the confidence to go forward. What I love about your story is that even in your unbelief, you didn't stop moving forward. You kept going. If
Hmm.
50 people showed up, okay, great. If 75 show up, okay, keep going. I don't really know where this is going. I don't believe, I
Right.
don't know what's going to happen, but you're just going to keep going and flow. So I think
Right.
pulling out of your story, I mean, it encourages me just listening to it, that if you don't know, it's okay. Keep going. You might not know what's going to happen. What's the
Hmm.
worst case scenario that can really
Right.
come out of it? So, no, I think your story can definitely encourage others. What are some of your I even hate to ask it. So, like, what are some challenges that you might have today that I don't even want to go down the challenges. What are some of the greatest joys you have today? Some of the things that your wealth has brought you that you didn't, I'm going to stop the question there. What are some of your greatest joys, Pat? What makes you happy?
Well, I actually was writing about this yesterday, and the question, I have this thing called Storyworth, which is, my kids gave it to me actually. It's where it asks you questions every day, and you answer the questions, and you find a photo in your photos,
Hmm.
you drag it in, and it turns it into a coffee table book.
Hmm.
And it's basically a coffee table book with podcast questions like you're asking, that I've answered in writing with a
Yeah.
photo.
I've been told I ask hard questions.
Yeah, no, they're great. They're great questions. And so the question was what was your question was?
What's something that's brought you greatest joy? I was going to ask you a
Yeah,
hard one, like what's some of your challenges, but I think we talked a lot
right.
about that. And, right now, to ask those questions sometimes feel heavy. What are your biggest challenges in life? Well, sometimes people don't want to ask that.
Right.
So I'm, thinking about it on the fly while we're talking. You know what, Pat? What brings you joy?
So the answer is people.
Hmm.
And I think I learned that from COVID. I think, like, in COVID, God, I missed everything from, like, talking to someone in line in a coffee shop
Hmm.
to walking my dog down the street and having someone pet her and ask me how old she is and what's her name. Like, it was fucking brutal. I hated it. I just couldn't stand it. That lockdown was just terrible for me. And I think that I didn't know that about myself. I didn't know that I was so addicted to people until it was taken away. And so I think people are my greatest joy. Of course, the greater joys of people are my own kids, my wife, my family, my own dog, my own, you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
my parents, that those are all top of the list, but the list is of people. That's the one thing I really cannot do without. I don't know how people do prison. I don't know
Mm.
how. I don't know. I've been watching this show on Netflix called Alone, where they drop people off in the Arctic and they're by
Mm.
themselves with a camera, and whoever lasts the longest gets $1 million. And these people are alone for like 90 days, and like literally most of them go crazy. Most of them like start losing it psychologically because they have no one to talk to except a camera. And I think that I could never do prison. I could never do like solitary confinement. I could never do that show alone. I don't know. I can't imagine. I can do another lockdown. I'm you know, I'm breaking all the rules if it happens again, man.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think you'd be alone in that endeavor.
Yeah,
I,
Jesus.
I don't think so. I think, yeah, I agree. That was one of the hardest things. And I'm a lot like you. I love people person, and I will talk to just about anybody. I can go in a grocery store, it doesn't matter, checkout clerk, it doesn't matter. Those interactions with people are precious because, and you probably would agree that you find that no matter who you talk to, you can always walk away with some nugget of information that you can always learn something from somebody,
Mm,
regardless who it is. So I always seek to try and learn something from somebody, even if it's a 2 minute passing.
mm, indeed.
So, and it's a beautiful gift, isn't it? I mean, people versus stuff. You have the ability to buy probably just about anything you want, and people bring you more joy. I mean, stuff is good too, but
Yeah,
we like stuff.
yeah. I mean, stuff does. So what happens is like stuff is a dopamine. Like I'm dealing with age on my parents, right? Both of my parents are 88.
Mm.
I have a stepmom that's like 80. And I'm finding that like they all like order stuff on Amazon like that they don't need. And I think it's a dopamine. Like I like order a plastic Tupperware container and feel excited about that or whatever on Amazon. I'm like, what is that about? Like, why is that even a thing? Like, why does that make you feel good to log into Facebook and look at people's stories or go to
Mm.
Amazon and buy something, even if the thing is a worthless inanimate object? It's a dopamine. I think we're all being dragged in by these dopamine hits, and I think all things are dopamine hits. They're
Mm-hmm.
all. I don't care
Mm-hmm.
what it is, whether it costs $1 million or $5. It seems like,
Mm-hmm.
but
What?
what's real? It's not important.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, what's one thing that you bought for yourself that you didn't really need beside the Tupperware that you're like, oh shit, I spent a lot of money on that. And I'm glad I did and I didn't need
I
it. I'm
didn't
I'm
need.
curious. Yeah. We all have that one thing, I think.
I don't know.
No.
Another car, more clothes.
Yeah.
I'm getting joy from Stitch Fix. I know Stitch Fix is like this shirt is from Stitch Fix. Basically, they you get like a shopper and they send you 5 items every month
I
that
think I
match
heard of that.
your personality, and if they're good and they get to know you and you stick with it, then pretty much everything they send you is like, oh wow, that's cool, I'll wear that. And so, like, I'm starting to accumulate clothes again, all casual clothes. I threw away all my ties, threw away pretty much all my suits except for a black one for funerals or weddings or something. And so I'm getting into accumulation of clothes, but they're all like they're not name brands. They're just randos, but they're good
Mm-hmm.
quality, but they're just, whatever. And my wife said, okay, well, here's the deal. Like, every new thing you get, you have to throw something out. We can't just keep
Yeah, right.
buying more dressers to put these clothes in. So that's kind of how I've been dealing with this lately. Is I'm like, okay, well, I got 3 new shirts this month, so let me find 3 shirts to give to Goodwill.
Now, is that
So I'm
easy
going
to
through that.
do? Is that easy to do once you have those
It's sort of,
favorite shirts?
it sort of is because I've always enjoyed like purging. Gives me a sense of accomplishment, and it does make you realize, man, I haven't worn that thing in 4 years. I'm never going to wear it. Unless it's from like a marathon you completed or something and has sentimental value. And if that's the case, my wife's like, well, give me all your t-shirts that have sentimental value. I'm going to turn them into a quilt. You know?
Did she do that yet?
Yeah, she did it once. She's going to have to do it
cool.
again soon. Yeah.
That's great. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because some people are like that. They put meaning in their things, and that's okay. And other people don't. They don't really care. So, you know, it's a good way to take those things that have meaning and at least repurpose them, because you can only wear so many shirts.
Exactly. And what does it mean? Like, why does stuff have meaning? You ever drive past a house or a farm and there's like some car from like 1935 that's sitting out and it's like clearly hasn't been used in 50 years. And you're like, why don't they throw that damn thing out? Don't they see it? And it clearly has some sentimental meaning or some sort of meaning, but it means nothing. It's an old rusted car, you know?
It's a matter of perception through your lens, isn't it? Because to somebody, maybe the person who's in the house, that's the car that their great-great-grandfather drove. And then that person passed away and they had an attachment to the person. So they held on to the car.
It's the story.
You never know. It's a story. That's right. It's a story that's weaved.
This guy. I heard a Lex Friedman podcast yesterday, and the guy's like, everything is a story. And if it's not, everything is a story. It's like there's no reality in a story. It's just a story. It's like the great-grandfather drove it. That's the story, and that's all there is. There's nothing else, right? It's just a story. If there's not a story, then there's no meaning in anything. And I was like, wow, that's deep. So,
yeah. And some people are really good storytellers. They hold on to, they hold on to things and they love their stories. I mean, I've got stories for things too. So that's why I asked you about the arm, because I realized you must have stories in things, because like I have a tattoo also, and there's a story behind that. You do things with stories. So it's very interesting. I hold on to things too. And there's some things I look at, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't need that thing anymore. It doesn't serve me. And that helps too. That's a good filter. I ask myself that a lot. I'm like, why am I holding on to this thing? How does it make me feel holding on to it? Do I really need to keep this or not? And we realize how little we need. I mean, I've moved probably 5 times in the last 5 years. So every year that a move has gone by, I've just whittled down more and more and more and more. And you say, wow, you really don't need a whole lot. I need a couple pots, pans, and a bed and a dresser and some dishes.
It's a minimalist mentality, and it's starting to come back. It's actually, believe it or not, it's coming back in the younger generation.
Yeah.
The older generation is the hoarders. It's very rare to find a 24-year-old hoarder.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. Yeah, I just have to go visit. My mom is in her mid 70s, late 70s. Same thing. I go visit her, or even my dad. I'll go visit him, and their houses are packed with stuff. So much stuff. I'm like, I can't take it. I'm ADD. I walk in there. I'm like, I can't take it.
Yeah, you want to clear it. Right?
I want to clear it out. Yeah, I'm like, Mom, just get a dumpster. It's like, she's like, oh, I'm saving this. I'm saving that. I'm like, well, you can save it, but I'm not taking it either. Like, I got one thing. I got my picture on the wall, and that's it. I've got pictures that are still packed. We moved into our home a year ago. I still have boxes that are packed. So I'll eventually just go through them, and I'm like, nope, just get rid of them, because I haven't unpacked it and I haven't needed it in over a year. Like, why keep this thing? And my kids don't want it, so let somebody else enjoy it, So
I'm with you.
Yeah. And so as we begin to wrap up, what's one question you wish I would have asked, or a topic that we would have covered, and how would you have answered it or expanded on the topic? Something I didn't ask.
Wow. Trying to think of things that are going to take an hour.
That's okay. Well, you might not have an hour. I do. So it makes good podcasts.
Jeez, how do I do this without like a cliche? I don't know. I believe that one of the things I think that drives majority of the men and women in Gobundance is this concept of, constant and never ending improvement, like Kanai, right? I think Tony Robbins came up with that. It's like always be improving. A lot of people didn't understand why podcasts would take off. I kind of knew from the beginning they would, because I was always into like self-help and like self-improvement and listening to tapes and listening to speakers on tape. And I thought, I used to always think, like, why isn't there a radio station that instead of playing songs would play like all these famous speeches or even 5 minutes of motivational speakers and stuff. And I said, man, that would be a great radio program. I would listen to that station all day long, but no one ever created it. But they did kind of now. It's called podcasts. And it's like, the difference is it's not just motivation, but it's only like 1% of it. It's true crime, and it's athletics and health and sports and everything else.
Nonsense, noise. A lot of it's noise, isn't
tons.
it? Yeah, there's
Whatever
tons of noise
you want,
out there.
There's and it's free. And the people like yourself that ask the questions are free from being censored. And it's an amazing tool. And so for me, I don't know why more people don't do it. And same thing with books on tape. And like, you have so many waking hours in a day, and there's so much time wasted driving and walking the dog and sitting on airplanes. And, if you could just feed your mind with podcasts like yours and with books on tape that are self-improvement books or something in your field, you're going to do so much better in life, right? Because you're learning from people all over the world. You're not just learning from somebody who happens to be in your family. And I really think that that's kind of how I was able to break out of the mold. Like, people that I went to high school with are like, how the hell do you know all these people? And it's like, well, because I put myself out there. I go to like seminars where I don't know anyone, and I meet like 5 new best friends, you know what I mean? Or I'll hear them on a podcast and I'll reach out to them or whatever, you just got to keep putting yourself out there and keep listening to people and do what they say to do, so long as they have a track record and they're not, crooks
success,
or whatever.
Success leaves clues.
Exactly.
You'll see it there. What's, besides your books, or you can recommend your books, what's a book you would recommend everyone should read?
Well, some ones that I've done recently, which are contrarian to a lot of the stuff that we think about and talk about at Gobundance. One is Die with Zero. It really is a contrarian approach to saving and investing. It's like, take all your money and spend it now while you're alive. I really enjoyed that book. So I'll say Die with Zero. That was a good one. And another one that I just read, which I really enjoyed, which is Solve for Happy. It was written by a mathematician, one of the higher ups at Google, who wrote a mathematic equation for happiness. And it was fascinating for me, at least.
I could appreciate that because I have a background in math. I used to be a math teacher.
Oh, you do?
I did. Yeah, I was for probably a 30-year time span. So I always appreciate the math stuff. I mean, I didn't.
Yeah, you should read it.
I think I will. And somebody else actually just suggested to me to read Die with Zero. So
yeah. I mean, the equation, one of the many equations, but one of the main equations is your circumstance or your reality is greater than or equal to your expectations. So if you're getting married and your expectation is to have this, 78-degree sunny day, and all these things that go right and something goes wrong, you're unhappy because it's less than your reality is less than your expectation. But if your expectation is simply to share vows with the love of your life and everything else is a plus, if your only expectation is that, and then it happens that everyone has fun and it happens that the cake tasted brilliantly, then that's greater than your expectations. And therefore, you're happy.
What a great perspective. What a great lens to look at things through. I mean, really, when you, instead of piling on, everything should be perfect in my world. If 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 happen, and then if 7 doesn't go the way I want it, then I'm going to train wreck everything else. It's
Created,
not,
yeah,
yeah, it just you created a train wreck. I mean, you
a
think of a 10,
difficult equation,
right, right. Yeah. If you think of a 10 car train and one derails, oh my goodness, and all goes wrong. But if you only
Right.
have one car, one expectation, one thing, the main thing to focus on, then everything else can be what it's going to be and just
Mm.
accept it the way it falls. So, yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, from all that we talked about, this is the last question that I ask all of my guests. I promise.
Fine.
What's one thing you want to leave my listeners with today that will help them change their tomorrow? What advice do you want to leave us with,
Mm.
Pat?
I would just tie into that tomorrow, say, how can you set up the day so that your expectation is equal to being your reality for the day ends up being greater than or equal to your expectation. So, essentially lowering your expectation, right? Like, and anything that throws you off is a good thing. It's a challenge, right? It makes you stronger. Like it's people are too soft nowadays, right? You know what I mean? It's good that
Yeah.
if you get a flat tire, it's good because it teaches you resilience. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, so
It's good
yeah,
to have a little adversity in there.
right,
Pat,
absolutely.
thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being on the podcast. How would you like people to reach out to you if they want?
So first of all, I want to tell you, Sue, that we talked about one of those things where I didn't know what I didn't know, and I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you don't know this or you do know this, but you are a natural host, like you're a natural interviewer, moderator. It's kind of like you're so relaxed, like and uncanned, and just I feel like you should be on television. You know what I mean? You're just so calm, cool, and collective. So you do a
Thank
great
you.
job, and
Uh,
you allow people to talk. Like some of these podcasts I go on, and like the host talks like 70% of the time, and then I end up getting 30%. And I'm like, well, why'd you even have me on? Because all it was your show. So you're clearly not that, and I appreciate that about you. So good job, and
Thank
I hope you
you.
keep doing this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. As you know, in the podcast space, you don't always get a lot of feedback. At least I don't for what I do, but I just do it because I enjoy it. And honestly, at the end of the day, I just want people to listen, to walk away with something that they can do to change their lives. So I seek out guests that have great stories to tell and experiences to inspire people. So thank you, Pat. I mean, I really, really appreciate it. And you're one of those guests that fit my box to be on. So I'm
That's
glad you.
awesome.
And I have to tell you that, and I think I might have shared this with you before. You're one of the founding members of Gobundance, and if it weren't for Gobundance, if it wasn't for Emerge, which was created a couple years ago, and that's kind of like if you don't qualify to get into Gobundance, you come in through Emerge. If it wasn't for Emerge, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. Emerge and that program and what was built changed the trajectory of my life. So I am forever thankful for what you created, which in turn I'm directly benefiting from it. It's changing my
That's
life.
awesome.
So
That's
I
awesome.
want to thank you for that.
Oh, my
I
pleasure.
really do.
My
I want to
pleasure.
thank you. This is one of those things that you didn't think was going to come out of Gobundance.
Yeah. No,
I didn't
absolutely.
even think about it. We just answered that question. This is one of those
Oh, that was
things
great.
that came out of it, and and I tell everybody that I meet, I'm very grateful. So thank you for your kind words.
My pleasure.
I'm
My
undone.
pleasure.
So thank you.
And so to answer your question, yeah, gobundance.com, and or you can just Google me. I'm not really selling anything these days, so I think I have a website, Hiban.com, and it may have like links to my books and stuff like that. But yeah, so yeah, definitely I would check out gobundance.com or Hiban.com.
And if you want to, I would love to have you back on, because we didn't even touch on your other book, The Quitter's Manifesto, which I read, and then I turned around and quit my job. So that's an interesting conversation for another day. So we didn't even touch on that. And then I wanted to talk to you about your Rockstar real estate podcast was also in there as well. So I think we're going to have to do this again, Pat. This was a lot of fun.
Let's do it. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, we will. We will. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. You know, after reflecting on Pat's kind comment at the end about me, I have to admit he caught me off guard. The moment certainly wasn't scripted, but I would feel like I missed an opportunity if I didn't let you know that my interviewing and podcasting skills are not something that come naturally to me. When I started podcasting in January 2023, not only did I not know what I was doing, but I was anything but calm. Actually, I was really nervous. But over time, I've taken small steps along the way to gain my confidence, improve my questioning techniques, and enjoy each interview more. So I want you to know that small steps really do lead to big wins if you consistently put in the work day after day and do it with intention. I appreciate my audience, and please remember to share this with a friend and leave a 5-star review. It only takes 30 seconds or less. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance. It gets better by choice. Take those small steps that lead to big wins, and have an awesome day, friends.